Yep, he sure is. Everyone loves the Nazi-killing jamboree that the Wolfenstein series has been delivering us for nearly 3 decades now. Recently I had a hankering to do another playthrough of my favorite installment in the series, and I thought, why not do a review on it, since it's arguably not the most popular or well-known Wolfenstein game. So I started recording footage and doing research, but then I soon discovered that this game actually can't be bought digitally. That's right, not on Steam, not on GOG. We'll get into that later, but for now, get psyched for the best Wolfenstein game you can't easily buy. Wolfenstein. No, seriously, that's the name. To avoid confusion, most people refer to it as Wolfenstein 2009. Now you may be wondering why I like this game more than the wildly popular Bethesda series that started with Wolfenstein The New Order in 2014. Well, I played every game in the new series from The New Order to Youngblood, and I have to say that while I can appreciate the world building and some of the mechanics, I could never really get into them the way I did with Wolfenstein 2009. Wolfenstein 2009 was released on PC, PlayStation 3, and Xbox 360 and uses the id Tech 4 engine, which was first used for Doom 3. The engine's kind of a PC gaming sweet spot because, in my experience at least, it means you can run the game easily on older systems, but graphics-wise they still hold up well today. Personally, I first played it in 2017 as I was still using a 7-year-old laptop at the time. I remember thinking it was just going to be another World War II game like the late 2000s Call of Duty or Medal of Honor games, but while it does feel like that at times, the game actually managed to surprise me with how good it is. Why is it so good, you ask? I'll tell you why. This game is Indiana Jones. Classic Indiana Jones. What I mean is this is the 4th indie movie we never got. It has everything that made the 2 best indie films great. You've got Nazis doing archaeology to acquire supernatural powers. You've got a hero in a leather jacket trying to stop them. You've got Hollywood accents and over-the-top bad guys.
Finally, I can have my revenge.
But it's not just the visuals. The game's soundtrack has a very John Williams vibe to it that really enhances the cinematic adventure feel. At times, the resemblance is very noticeable. Hell, at one point you even run over a Nazi with a cargo truck just like in Raiders. All of this combines to create an experience that is very cinematic, yet without the need for constant cutscenes. And when there are cinematic cutscenes, they too contain all the great Hollywood tropes that remind you of Indy and other World War II era adventure films. Even The Rocketeer. The game is a direct sequel to 2001's Return to Castle Wolfenstein, which also revolved around Nazi archaeology and the paranormal. The beginning of the game is a 007-like cold open, where the famous B.J. Blazkowicz has infiltrated an alternate history version of the battleship Tirpitz, one which is able to launch V-2 rockets targeting London. Aboard the ship, B.J. finds a strange medallion, and in the cinematic action scene that follows, we see it contains great destructive power. BJ learns from his superiors that the medallion he has is powered by Nachzona crystals that are mined in a German town called Eisenstadt. BJ is sent to link up with a local underground resistance movement called the Kreisau Circle in order to investigate the Nazi operations in the town. Now forgive the digression here, but while I get the game as alternative history, as someone who spent a good portion of his life studying the Second World War, the whole Kreisau Circle thing is a little bit grating for me. Unfortunately, the Third Reich never really had an organized armed resistance like what we see in the game. I think it would have been much better if they set it in some other part of occupied Europe and had you working with, say, the Polish or Czech resistance. The Czechs actually pulled off a daring action movie operation in real life, killing SS officer and architect of the Holocaust Reinhard Heydrich in Prague. Look up Operation Anthropoid sometime, it's an incredible story. Anyway, you arrive in Eisenstadt by train and a shootout breaks out between the Nazi forces and your resistance contacts. During the battle, a train carrying special cargo detonates and it becomes very clear that it wasn't carrying ordinary war material. After escaping the train station, you enter the town proper, and here's where the game subverts your expectations. See, Eisenstadt serves as a sort of central hub, and essentially Wolfenstein is an open world game, albeit a limited one. Throughout the game, you'll interact with 2 different factions that give you both story missions and optional side missions.
So, you are Agent Blazkowicz.
Meanwhile, there's a black market which sells you ammunition and upgrades for your weapons and your medallion. And that's why you'll want to do all the side missions, because that way you can get more gold to make purchases. Another collectible you'll need are Tomes of Power, which unlock different abilities for your medallion. Hey, wait a minute, I remember these. Nice one, Raven. And finally, there's Intel, which unlocks different weapon upgrades, so yeah, do those side missions. In your first story mission after arriving in town, you infiltrate a Nazi archaeological dig and find a Russian prisoner who's a member of something called the Golden Dawn. Anyway, BJ learns that the Nazis have discovered the underground remains of an ancient, possibly inhuman civilization called the Thule, an obvious real-world reference to the Tula Society that was associated with certain prominent Nazis before they came to power. Inside the dig, you find another part of the medallion, and your new Russian friend explains how it can be used to enter something called the Veil. The Veil is a sort of intermediate dimension separating our reality from something called the Black Sun dimension. The Nazis are messing around with portals in order to draw energy from the Black Sun dimension and power all kinds of advanced weaponry. As you progress through the missions, you'll learn more about the town of Eisenstadt and the bizarre occurrences the locals have been noticing ever since the Nazis started their mining and research operations in the area. Normally, you'll navigate the town to get orders from the Resistance or the Magic Russians, and then you'll either enter a building or rendezvous with the driver who will take you to the mission site. I really like the early missions in the game because they often start off in what seems like an innocuous location, like a hospital or a farmhouse, but as you progress, you discover secret weapons labs, the crystal mines, and interdimensional portals. Let me just say right now, this is not your ordinary World War II game. Another cool feature of the game is how the town becomes increasingly dangerous as you progress through the story. Early on, you'll face patrols of ordinary soldiers and officers, but later you start to encounter harder enemies, such as the scribes, Nazi wizards who shield troops and hit you with deadly energy attacks while teleporting around the battlefield. There are armored soldiers wielding energy weapons that can only be killed by hitting 3 weak points. You've got these little monster things, Nazi dominatrixes, Rocketeer soldiers, snipers, and even a Tiger tank at one point. Now on that note, let's talk about what we all play Wolfenstein games for: killing Nazis. You've heard of this machine that kills fascists? Well, this game gives you machines that straight up disintegrate them. You start with your basic World War II German weapons like the Mauser Kar 98K, the classic MP40, the Sturmgewehr 44, and the Panzerschreck, the rocket launcher that Schrecks Panzers. But you'll also acquire the Armored Soldier's particle beam weapon, and you know what? Let's just have a particle beam montage right now. Beautiful. Moving on, there's the Tesla gun, which I don't use much, but it kind of works like a type of electric shotgun. Then you have the Leichenfaust, which is good for dealing with supernatural enemies. There's a flamethrower because why not? And of course you got your hand grenades. As I said, all of these weapons could be upgraded, and that leads to cosmetic changes in-game, so you get that feel of really customizing your own gear. I really appreciate that they didn't go with the typical World War II game formula and limit you to 2 weapons. There's a time for realism, and then there's a time when you want to be able to lug around an entire arsenal so you can blow shit up and turn Nazis into skeletons. But wait, there's more. Thanks to that medallion you fully activate in the second story mission, you can also acquire supernatural powers. First, just entering the Veil makes it easier to see in dark areas, and there are things like holes in walls and ladders which can only be seen from inside the Veil. The Veil also has these creatures called Geist floating around, which kill nearby enemies when you shoot them, kind of like explosive barrels. Just don't shoot too many of them or they get pissed off and start attacking you. Your first real Veil power is Meyer, which is basically bullet time but can be upgraded to slow down time even further, and even kill nearby enemies upon activation. One nice thing about the Veil powers you get in this game is that whenever you acquire one, you'll usually be faced with a number of situations that require you to use that power in order to proceed. This way you get a feel for what they do, and then if you have a problem later in the game, you'll figure out which ability you need to use. The other 2 powers you'll acquire later are the Shield, which can be upgraded to reflect bullets, and Empower, which not only increases the damage of your shots, but also helps them penetrate through cover. You have an energy bar which depletes as you use your powers, and you can use more than one at the same time, although this naturally drains the bar faster. As you run out of energy, your screen starts to turn gray, so you don't have to watch the bar to know when you need to get into cover. The medallion can be recharged by finding these energy pools throughout the levels. They're easier to spot when you're in the Vale, but in general they tend to be plentiful, and you rarely have to go very far to find one. You can also fill up your energy if you find some of these special barrels. And if you find your screen going gray for no reason, that means there's a device nearby that is suppressing your medallion. Destroy it to regain the use of your Vale powers. In addition to all this, the game has a lot of other methods and mechanics for taking out your enemies. There are, of course, gun emplacements with the iconic MG42, and you'll get to use some flak guns in some areas. But you can also use your surroundings to your advantage. Naturally, the game has flammable barrels, but you can also pick them up and throw them for some explosive Donkey Kong action. The Vale energy barrels can also be shot or thrown, and when they explode, they'll levitate objects and enemies in the vicinity for a few seconds, making them completely vulnerable. You can also pick up axes and hammers and either swing them or throw them. This is supposed to be for stealth kills, although the stealth system in the game isn't really very reliable, and you're usually going to end up fighting everyone anyway. Still, these weapons can be pretty funny at times. As for negatives, I'd say the worst problem in the game is weapon switching. See, in order to make your Vale powers easy to access, they take up keys 1 through 4. Your weapons, however, don't have numbered keys, so you need to scroll with the mouse wheel or switch with Q. Unfortunately, this is before the days of things like weapon wheels, so switching between certain weapons quickly and efficiently can be a problem at times. Another problem may not be a problem depending on your playstyle. As I said before, the game is close to the World War II Call of Duty games of its era, meaning you have regenerating health and period weapons. But what that means sometimes is that you may forget exactly what kind of game you're playing and spend most of your time using conventional weapons and not using your powers much. This can lead to the game feeling a little repetitive at times, because you often find yourself facing hordes of soldiers all behind cover and taking potshots at you from every angle. But this can be mitigated by remembering to use your medallion powers and also your stronger weapons, like the particle beam or the Leichenfaust. You can upgrade your medallion to a point where you'll be able to see and actually shoot enemies behind cover, sometimes even through floors. So don't think you need to play it safe and carefully pick off your attackers one by one. Remember, this is Indiana Jones, not Band of Brothers. The game uses a checkpoint system for saving, but most of the time checkpoints are frequent enough, so you won't have to backtrack too much if you die. Also, the ragdoll physics are a bit wacky on occasion, but it's really not a big deal. More amusing than anything. That pretty much does it for the game's flaws, which of course leads us to the big elephant in the room, actually getting the game. So the problem here is the game was made by Raven and published by Activision. When Bethesda acquired the rights and made the new series, apparently they didn't acquire the rights to this game. Oddly enough, they do have the rights to Return to Castle Wolfenstein, so you can still pick that up on Steam with no problem, but you can't do the same for this game that came out almost a decade later. As I was saying earlier, there's no way to buy the game digitally. You can find physical copies on eBay or Amazon, but they get pretty pricey. Now, because of this, and only this, I'm going to say something I wouldn't normally say on this channel. If you want to play this game, the easiest way would be for you to get a good VPN and do what must be done. Don't judge me. If the company isn't going to put the game up for sale, you can't really steal it from them. It's not like they're going to be getting any royalties off of those used copies floating around out there. But if Bethesda ever acquires the rights and starts selling it again, by all means, go out and buy it. Anyway, I know it may seem weird that this is my favorite Wolfenstein game in the whole series, but what can I say? I keep coming back to it every few years since I played it. It gives you a lot of flexibility, but it's built on a solid foundation of proven FPS mechanics. I've played all the games in the Bethesda Wolfenstein series, and the only two I actually enjoyed enough to play through to the end were New Order and New Colossus. Both those games had a lot going on in terms of world building, and they had some fun mechanics, but once I was done with them, that was it. I was done. There were just too many cutscenes or scripted moments, and while I can appreciate world building and I'm very much a storyline guy, New Colossus is just tonally all over the place. Plus, throughout both games, I was getting sick to death of constantly hearing BJ's angsty, brooding inner monologue.
We haul precious cargo. We have a train to catch. Another kid you murdered, General.
I mean, I'm the guy who usually hates silent protagonists, but there were times in the new games when I really wanted BJ to just shut the fuck up. Hell, I think even Duke Nukem thinks this BJ talks too much.
I hear children. A dog. And I see someone.
You're pissing me off.
2009 Wolfenstein's BJ keeps his mouth shut except when it's time to talk business.
Thank you, sir.
He's not giving us running commentary on the nature of death and war in between taking guys out with a hatchet.
That man is a spy!
But getting back to what I said earlier, Wolfenstein 2009 is a game that delivers a cinematic experience via its gameplay rather than constant, long cutscenes. Moreover, the game's locations and set pieces are impressive even for today, such as the giant underground mining complex, or the final level where you have to infiltrate and destroy a giant zeppelin. I mean, just look at this. The adventure movie soundtrack, coupled with all the old action movie tropes like dudes falling over railings when they get shot, and Germans speaking English with exaggerated accents,
Sehr gut. Take the prisoners to this factory.
reminds me not only of the indie movies, but also the whole genre of old action movies set in World War II that weren't even trying to be historically accurate. It's hard to define the genre, but you know those movies like The Dirty Dozen where commandos or spies have to carry out some kind of mission behind enemy lines. Everyone's got an MP40 and nobody's holding it or shooting it properly. Like every German soldier has an MP40, and maybe the good guy has an MP40, and this infant has an MP40, this dog has two MP40s. Classic Hollywood action, I love it. Anyway, if you can get your hands on this game, above board or not, by all means, give it a playthrough. Even if you don't see what I saw in it, I think you'll find that it's a very solid game that puts a unique twist on reliable, intuitive mechanics. But in my opinion at least, Wolfenstein 2009 is the real fourth and final Indiana Jones film, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is hereby purged from the canon, and all its supporters are designated thrice damned heretics. So be it. Let's see if your fridge can save you from that. Well everyone, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review. I certainly enjoyed slaughtering all those Nazis to make it. As always, I ask you to click like and subscribe, leave a comment if you have any questions about the game, or maybe you want to talk about your favorite Wolfenstein game, or if you have anything else you want to say about the series, or maybe suggestions, I'd love for you to write a comment. And also check the description for my Patreon page where you can support my work. I would really appreciate it. So once again, thanks for watching, and see you next time.